What if your ancestors never left? Not through conquest, not through flight, not through the tides of empire that swept across the subcontinent for thousands of years, while the rest of India bent beneath wave after wave of Indo-European migrations, bringing new languages, new gods, new bloodlines. The Tamil genome stood like a stone. And here's the contradiction. In a land obsessed with caste, with hierarchy, with the myth of Aryan purity, the people of Tamil Nadu carry almost none of the genetic markers linked to those northern migrations. Their DNA, it's older, far older. Buried inside their cells are mitochondrial lineages, M and N, that trace back not just thousands, but over 40,000 years, long before the Mahabharata, before Sanskrit, before cities, before words. This isn't ancestry, it's memory, written in molecules, passed through mothers and mothers before them, a thread that runs unbroken from the first humans who walked out of Africa, down India's southern spine, to the very edge of the ocean. And they didn't just survive. They stayed. They built. They remembered. Today, that memory sits in the blood of millions, in the fishermen of Rameswaram, in the temple dancers of Madurai, in the quiet wrinkles of a grandmother's hands, who never learned to read, but carries the oldest story in the world under her skin. Because this isn't just about genetics, it's about identity, about what it means to belong to a land so ancient. Even history forgets when it began. So we ask again, what if your bloodline remembers a world before language, before gods, before borders? And what if, hidden deep in that memory, there's a forgotten city, a lost script, a buried civilization that modern science is only now daring to connect? To the Tamils, they say the Indus Valley vanished, that its cities collapsed, its language lost, its people disappeared into the dust of history. But what if they didn't vanish? What if, quietly, stubbornly, they survived not in ruins, but in rhythm, not in stone, but in blood? Deep in the genomes of Tamil populations, there's a whisper. Haplogroup L, ancient, unmistakable. A paternal lineage tied not to conquerors, but to builders, farmers, planners, men who etched symbols into seals long before the first Brahmin ever lit a fire. And then there's the stranger link, DNA from Iranian Neolithic farmers, mingled with South Indian hunter-gatherers, preserved in Tamil bloodlines like buried treasure. It's a match, a genetic signature that mirrors the Indus periphery. And now the map shifts. Because in the village of Kishati, thousands of kilometers south of the Indus floodplains, archaeologists have unearthed a different story. Urban layouts, firing kills, pottery inscribed with a script no one has fully deciphered. Yet, the symbols, they echo those from Harappa. Their form familiar, their spacing measured, their rhythm intentional. This isn't coincidence. This is continuity. Linguists, once ridiculed, now whisper again. Could Tamil, and the Dravidian family, be the last living descendants of the Indus tongue? If so, it means Tamil is not just ancient. It's ancestral. A voice that weathered collapse, that moved south as cities fell, that took root in new soil, but never forgot its motherland. So next time someone calls Tamil regional, remember this. You might be hearing the closest living sound to a 4,500-year-old civilization, a people who didn't die. They evolved. But if this is true, if Tamil blood, Tamil language, and Tamil earth hold the legacy of the Indus, why isn't it in our textbooks? It shouldn't make sense. Two peoples, two languages, two histories soaked in conflict. One speaks the tongue of ancient Dravidians, the other, an Indo-Aryan dialect born from the north. For centuries, they've stood as opposites, Sri Lankan Tamils and Sinhalese, divided by war, by politics, by memory. But when scientists mapped their genomes, they found something no one expected. Not divergence, not opposition, closeness. The DNA didn't lie. In fact, it whispered a story older than the conflict, older than the island's names, older than even myth. Genetic markers, shared across generations. Deep alleles that link the fisherman of Jaffna to the farmer in Kandy. Not just similar, closer to each other than either is to their mainland cousins. How? Because isolation didn't divide them. It fused them. Two migrations, one from southern India, one from the west, landed here over 2,000 years ago. Different origins, different tongues. But the island was small, and time was long. They married. They lived. They buried their dead beneath the same trees. Centuries passed. Their languages didn't merge. Their stories didn't always align. But their blood did. It's the paradox of Sri Lanka, the island that split cultures, but blended chromosomes. And it asks a question we rarely dare to speak aloud. Is language stronger than blood? Because if your DNA echoes the voice of your so-called rival, what does that make you? A witness? Or a mirror? But the twist isn't over. Because buried in the genome, beyond the Tamil and the Sinhalese, there's a single genetic allele. Ancient, unusual, and found in neither India nor Lanka. One allele, though, points to something older and even stranger. It's one of the oldest signatures in human history. Not carved in stone, not written in scrolls, etched in chromosomes. Haplogroup H. It's been called the Indian marker. A paternal lineage so old, so rooted, it barely crossed the borders of the subcontinent. While our 1A1 marched in with the Aryans, linked to horses, fire rituals, and northern tongues, Haplogroup H stayed. It didn't ride chariots. It didn't build empires. It survived. In Tamil Nadu, this lineage doesn't hide in the margins. It pulses through the veins of millions, especially in the so-called lower castes. The farmers, the weavers, the stonebreakers, men whose fathers and their fathers before them passed down a legacy that predates gods. This isn't just biology, it's rebellion. Because every time history tried to rewrite their worth, their genome refused to forget. It remembered the hunter-gatherers, the early farmers, the tribes who never left. This lineage doesn't point north. It points down, into the soil, into the caves, into the bones of men who lit the first fires on this land. And that changes everything. Because when you map this DNA, when you trace the lines not of kings, but of kin, you don't see invasion. You see endurance. This wasn't a place where blood was replaced. It was a place where blood remained, unshaken. But here's the twist. Even inside this ancient continuity, even in the veins of those who never crossed borders, another force was at work. Not nature, not migration, a social construct, a system. And it, too, left a trace. Yet even within this ancient blood, caste left its fingerprint. They were called twice-born, men of ritual, of fire, of mantra, priests who claimed descent from gods, lineages so sacred, even marriage became theology, the body a temple, the bloodline divine. But when the genome was sequenced, something cracked, because in the upper caste men of Tamil Nadu, hidden beneath centuries of silence, scientists found something unexpected. Not just the ancient markers of the land, but whispers from another world. R1A1, J2, Y chromosome signatures, tracing back to the Eurasian steppe and the mountains of Iran. Foreign, male, elite, not dominant, just present. A faint imprint, preserved like fossilized incense in an ironclad system. Because for over 2,000 years, these lineages were kept in place, not by invasion, but by isolation. Endogamy, a closed loop, where surnames and chromosomes passed down like holy texts. They called it purity. But nature remembers patterns, not myths. And here's where it gets strange. In these same lineages, locked in tight, preserved for generations, scientists found something else. Mutations. Not ancient wisdom, but ancient errors. Alleles tied to brittle bones, to blood disorders, to illnesses that pass unseen, until a child is born with the weight of history in their genes. This isn't metaphor. This is molecular memory. Because when a bloodline is sealed for centuries, it doesn't just carry tradition. It carries everything. The holy, the hidden, the hurt. These aren't just stories etched in palm leaves or temple walls. They're encoded in base pairs, repeating, relentless. And the question isn't whether gods walked among us. It's this. What stories do these mutations carry from temple to tomb? There's a memory older than history. Not spoken, not written, carried in silence from mother to child. In every Tamil woman, a thread unbroken for over 40,000 years. It's not myth. It's mitochondrial DNA. While empires rose, fell, and rewrote the names of men, the mothers remembered. Their legacy, etched in haplogroups M and U, maps a journey older than any scripture. M, the great matrilineal line of South Asia, shared with the Andamanese, with echoes even in Aboriginal Australia. Proof that long before borders, before temples, before the word Tamil ever existed, her ancestors walked here. U, rarer, but no less sacred, found in ancient Iranian farmers, traced in Indus Valley graves. Not conquerors, not warriors. Women, migrating, marrying, surviving. This is not about power. It's about presence. The resilience of the unnamed. The cooks. The caretakers. The storytellers. Because even when caste locked doors, when surnames erased maternal lines, the genome remembered her. And what it remembers is vast. Tamil maternal DNA shows staggering diversity. Not randomness, but rooted depth. A living archive of every lullaby, every funeral wail, every ritual passed between wombs. These women, our great-great-great-grandmothers, carried fire in their blood and silence on their lips. No written language, no signature, just the code. And it stretched, not just across generations, but across waters. Because buried inside one rare subclade, there's a whisper of something distant, something salt-swept, unmistakably oceanic. It's not Indian, it's not Iranian, but it's there, in a Tamil mother's DNA. And it begs the question. But one subclade hints at contact across oceans. They found it in the dust, a Roman coin. Not in Italy, not near the Tiber, but buried deep in Tamil soil, near Pompihar. A silver denarius, stamped with Caesar's face, lying beneath a mango grove, in a land that never knew Roman legions. So how did it get there? Because 2,000 years ago, Tamilakam wasn't just a kingdom. It was a port to the world. Ships left Maziris with pepper and pearls. They returned with wine, gold, glass, and whispers. Words that mixed in harbors. Scripts that kissed each other across parchment. And yet, there was no conquest. No empire claimed these shores. Tamil traders didn't need armies. They had cinnamon, and language, and the ocean. In Alexandria, they called it the Tamil route. In Petra, Tamil coins sat in Nabatean hands. And in the dry winds of Arabia, amphorae carried more than oil. They carried stories. Some in Tamil Brahmi, etched on the clay. Letters that made it all the way to the Red Sea. This wasn't silence. This was diplomacy. An island of continuity in a world tearing itself apart. As Rome burned and Persia rose and China fractured, the Tamils remained. Trading, writing, remembering. The DNA agrees. Unlike the chaos of Eurasia, with its invasions and erasures, Tamil lineages show stability. Subtle inputs, yes. A few new alleles. A maternal line from the far west. A Y chromosome echo from the Gulf. But nothing dramatic. No collapse. No overwrite. Just contact. Absorption. Coexistence. And then preservation. But here's the question. If words crossed oceans, if DNA did too, then what else sailed in the belly of those ships? Could these routes have carried more than just spices? There's a paradox carved into the Tamil body. The blood ancient. The genes, older than agriculture, older than war. But the language? Younger. Not by decades. By millennia. Dravidian tongues, including Tamil, are estimated to be around 4,500 years old. But some of the mitochondrial DNA stretches back more than 40,000. It's like opening a time capsule, and finding the letter inside is newer than the box. How is that possible? Because language shifts. It dies, morphs, fractures. But DNA clings. It remembers migrations, famines, rituals, and sometimes it remembers voices no one speaks anymore. That's the contradiction. Your ancestors may have spoken something entirely different, a tongue without a name, without script, before Tamil was Tamil. And the clues? They're hiding in places you wouldn't expect. In the north, languages like Marathi and Sanskrit carry strange Dravidian fingerprints. Words that don't belong. Rhythms that echo a grammar older than Vedas. Linguists call them substrates, shadows of a lost linguistic layer. And they match, not Indo-European roots, but Dravidian ones. It's like a ghost language is whispering from inside other tongues. Could it be that the Dravidian voice once reached far beyond the south? That Tamil's ancestors walked lands now ruled by Hindi, Urdu, even Persian? And if so, what happened to those older words? Did they die? Or did they get reborn in new dialects, new melodies, while the blood stayed the same? Because while the mouth forgets, the body remembers. And that brings us to a chilling, beautiful question. If your genes are older than your grammar, then who were you, before language knew how to name you? So what language did your genes speak before words? If South Asia had a compass, genetic, not geographic, it wouldn't point north. It would point south, to the edge of the subcontinent, to the Tamils. Because when scientists plotted the DNA of Indian populations, allele by allele, cluster by cluster, a pattern emerged. A slope, a gradient. At one end, the north, shaped by centuries of waves, Indo-European speakers, steppe nomads, Persian warriors. At the other end, the deep south, Tamil Nadu, a genetic outpost where the compass settles, steady and still, immune to storms that redrew maps elsewhere. In PCA plots, it's unmistakable. Tamil genomes lie at the far tip of the Indian cline, high in ancient South Indian ancestry, low in steppe, untouched by later empires of the blood. This is an isolation. It's resistance, not against people, but against forgetting. Because where others were overwritten, Tamil lineages endured. They became the baseline, the codebook from which the rest diverged. The compass doesn't point to power. It points to memory, to tribes that first shaped the land, to rituals born in stone circles, not marble halls, to lineages that never needed rescuing, because they never disappeared. And here's where it gets personal. This isn't just data. It's identity. Your body carries coordinates. Your cells remember which direction your ancestors walked, where they settled, where they refused to leave. And for Tamils, that direction is not a line. It's a route. But even in that route, in the very anchor of the Indian cline, a new riddle stirs. Because the compass may point to the beginning, but there's something beneath even that. An anomaly. A ghost signal. A whisper from a time before clines, before castes, before categories. But what if even this compass hides an older map? Imagine a wall, not of stone, but of vows. Vows whispered across fire. Vows that echo in surnames, in rituals, in who you're allowed to love. This is endogamy. And in Tamil Nadu, it wasn't just custom, it became code. 4 generations, caste operated like a genetic firewall, sealing communities, preserving bloodlines, locking an identity so tightly, not even time could break through. It worked. Tamil castes today form one of the most genetically distinct clusters in South Asia, a population sculpted not by geography, but by social architecture. From the outside, stability, continuity, pride. But open the genome, and you see the price. Because when a lineage folds in on itself, again and again, something else begins to take root. Mutations. Not the kind that shaped species. The kind that carry pain. In some Tamil families, rare genetic disorders, once hidden, emerged with uncanny frequency. A bone that won't stop growing. A blood cell that won't hold oxygen. A skin that burns from within. Sclerosis. Beta thalassemia. Recessive diseases that slip past generation after generation of arranged marriages until suddenly, a child was born with a double inheritance. Not of language, not of legacy, but of risk. This is the paradox. The very system designed to protect identity also protected its flaws. What began as a way to honor the past, to remember who we are, became a loop that remembers everything. The rituals, the surnames, the mutations, and the question it leaves us with, the one the genome dares us to ask, isn't just medical, it's moral. In preserving identity, did we also preserve our weaknesses? We all carry the same script. 3 billion letters, nearly identical in every human alive. But somewhere, in that last 0.1%, the story changes. For Tamils, it's not a story of conquest. It's continuity. Not uniqueness like an island, isolated alone, but distinctness like a mosaic. Every tile old, every piece chosen, every fracture preserved. Because Tamil DNA doesn't shout, it whispers. A fire lit, by hands that never built temples, of mothers who taught rituals before they had names, of traders who crossed oceans, not with armies, but with poems, spices, and secrets. This isn't about race. It's about memory, the kind that outlives language, outlives empire, outlives even history itself. The compass pointed here, the genes remembered here, even as borders changed, as tongues evolved, as stories were written and rewritten. The blood did not forget. And maybe that's what makes this legacy powerful. Not because it was untouched, but because it chose what to keep. Because when you carry 40,000 years of memory, burning inside the marrow of your bones, it's not just survival, it's inheritance. So ask yourself, if your DNA carried 40 millennia of memory, what would you do with it? What would you protect? What would you rewrite? What would you finally remember? In the next episode, the forgotten matriarchs of South Asia and the silent empires they built.